The snow fell heavy that night, blanketing the quiet little town in a deep, muffling white that swallowed every sound. Streets vanished under drifts, cars sat abandoned like forgotten toys, and the wind moaned through bare branches like a distant lament. At the far edge of town, behind a weathered picket fence leaning slightly under the weight of ice, stood a modest wooden house, with a thin thread of smoke rising from its chimney, the only sign of life in the frozen darkness. Inside, by the soft flicker of a hearth fire, sat a gentle elderly woman named Margaret. Her grey hair was neatly pinned. Her hands moved steadily with knitting needles, click, clack in the peaceful rhythm that had kept her company through many long winters. The house was small and warm, but tonight it felt especially empty. Her husband had passed years ago. Her children lived in distant cities with lives of their own, and the night stretched long and silent. As the blizzard raged harder outside, rattling the windows, Margaret closed her eyes for a moment and whispered a quiet prayer, that anyone caught out in this merciless cold might find shelter and warmth. She had no way of knowing how soon that simple wish would find its answer, or how profoundly it would reshape her world. The knock came sharp and sudden, shaking the old door in its frame. Margaret startled, her knitting nearly slipping from her lap. Visitors at this hour, in weather like this, were unheard of. Her heart beat faster as she rose, drawing her shawl close, and approached the door. When she opened it, a gust of icy wind rushed in, carrying with it the sight that stole her breath. There, framed in the swirling snow, stood 15 men, tall, broad, clad in heavy leather jackets adorned with patches that bore a name many feared, Hell's Angels. Ice clung to their thick beards, their faces were flushed and raw from the cold, their boots buried deep in the drift. Behind them, a row of motorcycles leaned together, already half entombed in snow. Chrome dulled to a ghostly white. For a heartbeat, fear flickered through Margaret. These were the men stories warned about, outlaws, trouble on wheels. Yet in the dim porch light she saw something else. They were shaking, lips tinged blue, hands stiff, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Tonight, they were simply men on the edge of survival. Without hesitation, Margaret stepped back and said softly, "Come in, before you freeze to death." The bikers exchanged glances, stunned. Doors usually slammed shut when they appeared, but this small woman, barely reaching their shoulders, was inviting them into her home. One by one they ducked through the doorway, stomping snow from their boots, their bulk filling the cozy room until the walls seemed to expand to hold them. The once quiet living room now hummed with the warmth of 15 thawing bodies gathered around the fire. Margaret moved quickly. She bustled to the kitchen, gathering what she had, fresh bread, a pot of soup, the last of her stew from supper. It wasn't a feast, but she served it with care, offering smiles and refills, as though these strangers were old friends. The men sat awkwardly on her floral sofa and wooden chairs, their massive frames dwarfing the furniture, unsure how to behave in the face of such unguarded kindness. They weren't accustomed to being treated as people in need rather than threats to avoid. As the night deepened and the storm battered the house like an angry beast, the bikers shared fragments of their tale. They had been riding cross-country when the blizzard ambushed them, highways shut, motels full or unreachable, their bikes threatening to seize in the cold. Without refuge, morning might never have found them alive. Margaret listened with quiet attention, refilling coffee cups, draping extra blankets over shoulders. One by one, the tough exteriors softened, eyelids grew heavy, and soon the room filled with deep, rumbling snores. Wrapped in quilts that carried the faint scent of lavender and thyme, the men slept soundly. Margaret stayed awake longer, watching over them, a tender warmth spreading through her chest. She had never been blessed with sons, but tonight it felt as though fate had sent her 15. Dawn arrived gentle, the storm spent. Outside, the world sparkled under a fresh layer of snow, sunlight glinting like scattered jewels. The bikers stirred, stretching stiff limbs, murmuring gruff thanks. Margaret prepared a simple breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, strong coffee, and they ate together in companionable quiet. When they stepped out to their bikes, still half buried but salvageable, their leader, a tall man with steady grey eyes, turned to her. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and sincere, "we won't ever forget what you did for us." Margaret only smiled, touching his arm lightly, and wished them safe roads. Then, with a roar that shook the quiet morning, the 15 riders departed, engines fading into the distance until silence settled once more. She believed that was the end, a strange, touching memory of one stormy night when her home became sanctuary for the unlikely. But kindness, once given, has a way of echoing far beyond the moment. The very next morning, as Margaret scattered crumbs for the birds in her snow-covered yard, a low rumble began, like thunder rolling closer. It grew into a deep, steady thunder, vibrating through the ground. She paused, shawl clutched tight, and peered down the road. Coming toward her was a sight that stopped her heart: motorcycles. Not a handful, not dozens, but a long, unending line, hundreds of them. Engines growling in unison, riders in the same leather and patches. They filled the street on both sides, surrounding her little house, until the air thrummed with power and the scent of fuel mingled with fresh snow. Neighbors watched from behind curtains, uncertain. Margaret stood frozen on her porch, eyes wide, tears beginning to gather. The leader from the night before dismounted first, walking up with a small bouquet of flowers, impossibly fresh in midwinter. He smiled, not with bravado, but with deep respect. "We told the brothers what you did," he said. "Word traveled fast. You opened your door when no one else would. We don't forget kindness like that." Then she saw the rest: riders unloading bags of groceries, cords of firewood, boxes of warm clothes, blankets and household supplies. Others carried shovels, tools. Some began clearing her driveway, repairing the sagging fence, oiling the creaky porch swing. For hours they worked, their laughter and easy talk filling the yard, turning her silent home into a place alive with energy and connection. Margaret watched it all, tears streaming freely now. She hadn't felt this surrounded by life in years. That day she understood a profound truth: kindness creates ripples. What she had offered freely without thought of return had come back multiplied 100 times over. In a world quick to judge and divide, she had witnessed how even the most hardened souls could respond with loyalty, honor, and gratitude. The Hells Angels, so often feared, revealed a side built on brotherhood and remembrance. As evening fell, the riders gathered before her house. Engines revved together in a mighty, unified roar, a salute to the woman who had saved them when the storm tried to claim their lives. Margaret stood on her porch, waving through happy tears as they rode away one by one, the thunder gradually fading into the snowy valley. Silence returned, but her house would never feel empty again. Somewhere out there, she had family now, bound not by blood, but by an open door on a freezing night. Margaret's story reminds us that compassion is never wasted. It plants seeds that grow in ways we cannot predict, softening hearts, bridging divides, and proving that sometimes all it takes is a warm fire, a shared meal, and the courage to choose kindness when fear urges otherwise. In the quiet glow of her fire that night, Margaret smiled, knowing she was never truly alone.